Imagine this. It's 793 AD, and you're a holy woman at Lindisfarne Monastery on the coast of England. You've dedicated your entire life to God, spent years in prayer and devotion, living in peace behind those sacred walls. Then one morning, Viking longships appear on the horizon. Within hours, your world is burning. Your sisters are screaming. And what happens next? Well, historians discovered the truth in 1982, and the lead researcher refused to publish his findings for 7 years. His colleagues called him a coward. He said he was protecting the dignity of the dead, because what the Vikings did to captured priestesses wasn't just brutal. It was systematic, ritualized, and deliberately erased from history. And I'm about to tell you everything. Listen, we all know about the blood eagle, right? That horrific execution method where they'd spread your ribs out like wings and pull your lungs through your back while you were still alive. It's gone viral across history channels and TikTok. But here's what nobody talks about. The blood eagle was reserved for high-profile male captives, kings and warriors who'd wronged the Vikings in some significant way. What happened to priestesses, to nuns, to holy women captured during monastery raids? That was something else entirely, something systematic, something the Viking poets themselves chose not to document explicitly, even though they had no problem glorifying battlefield carnage in graphic detail. But they left clues, archaeological evidence, genetic data, coded references in their sagas, and only recently have scholars begun piecing it all together. So let me set the scene for you. The Viking Age lasted from 793 to 1066 AD, nearly 3 centuries of raids, conquests, and expansion. And here's the thing. Vikings didn't just randomly attack places. They targeted Christian holy sites with surgical precision. Monasteries, convents, churches. Why? 3 reasons. First, the practical one. These places hoarded wealth, gold, silver, jeweled relics, illuminated manuscripts worth fortunes, and they were easy targets, usually located near water for Viking ships to access quickly. Second, psychological warfare. Destroying a people's holy sites doesn't just steal their treasure, it destroys their will to fight. It makes them believe their god can't protect them. But here's the third reason, the one nobody likes to discuss: religious ideology. This was a clash between 2 belief systems that viewed each other as existential threats. Norse pagans believed Christian priests and priestesses wielded dangerous spiritual power that could curse crops, ruin raids, destroy souls. And in Norse tradition, you don't just kill your spiritual enemies. You unmake them. You strip away their power through ritual. You corrupt what makes them holy, and you offer them to your gods as proof of your supremacy. Now, the Vikings had 3 specific methods they used on captured religious women. 3 distinct fates that were worse than anything they inflicted on male prisoners. And I'm going to walk you through all 3, because this is history they definitely didn't teach you in school. Method number 1, the threefold death. Picture yourself as that nun I mentioned earlier, in a coastal Irish monastery. It's early morning, just after dawn prayers. Suddenly the panic bell rings, but it's too late. The Vikings are already inside. You try to run, but there's nowhere to go. They're rounding up all the women, and you're dragged before their chieftain. Now here's where it gets ritualistic. The Norse pagans had a specific execution ritual reserved for enemies of their gods, not for warriors or kings, but specifically for priests, shamans, spiritual leaders. They called it the threefold death, and it combined 3 different execution methods in a single ritual. First, strangulation. Not to death, just to the edge of unconsciousness. Then they'd revive you. Second, drowning. Your face held down in freezing water, a river or bog or ritual pool, until your body stopped fighting. Then they'd pull you back and force the water from your lungs. Third, burning, sometimes while you were still breathing. This wasn't done quickly. It could take hours, sometimes an entire day. And the point wasn't just execution, it was spiritual warfare. See, by combining 3 death methods, they believed they were offering you to 3 different gods: Odin through hanging, Njord through drowning, Loki through burning, like they were crowdsourcing divine approval for the kill. And priestesses specifically, you were the ultimate offering. They weren't just killing an enemy. They were sacrificing your connection to your god and channeling that power to their Norse gods instead. The archaeological evidence for this is absolutely chilling. In 2003, they excavated a mass grave in County Cork, Ireland. At least 17 women, all showing signs of strangulation. 12 showed signs of drowning. 9 showed burn trauma. The Catholic Church initially fought the excavation, claiming they were desecrating holy ground. But genetic testing revealed these women were likely of religious orders. Isotope analysis of their teeth showed they'd consumed monastery diets. This wasn't a random massacre. This was systematic ritual execution. But here's the thing. Some priestesses weren't killed immediately. Some were kept alive for months, even years. And what happened during that time? Method number 2, spiritual corruption. This is where it gets even darker. And I need you to understand the Norse perspective to grasp why this was so terrifying. In Norse paganism, there was a specific type of witch called a vulva. These women performed cider, magic involving altered states, prophecy, and rituals that historians describe as, quote, sexually charged. Cider was women's magic, powerful magic, and the Vikings believed Christian priestesses possessed similar power. They didn't see nuns as weak, passive victims. They saw you as enemy sorceresses whose spiritual weapons needed to be neutralized. So they developed a counter-ritual. Captured priestesses were forced to participate in cider ceremonies. The goal wasn't just violation, though that was certainly part of it. The goal was corruption. By forcing a Christian holy woman to participate in pagan sexual magic, they believed they could literally invert her spiritual power, turn that divine connection into something profane. Now, you might think I'm speculating here, but check this out. In 922 AD, an Arab traveler named Ibn Fadlan witnessed a Viking funeral ceremony on the Volga River. His account describes in disturbing detail a slave girl used in a ritual involving multiple warriors and a vulva. And here's the kicker. He wrote this line. They told me some women used for these rites were once Christian holy women taken from lands across the sea. Historians ignored that line for centuries, dismissed it as exaggeration or cultural misunderstanding, until 2019, when a genetic study examined skeletal remains from vulva burial sites across Scandinavia. The findings were shocking. Approximately 23% of women buried with vulva ritual objects, staffs, crystals, herbs, had genetic markers indicating British or Irish ancestry. Nearly 1 in 4 Norse witches were actually foreign women. Women from Christian lands. Women who likely started their lives as nuns or priestesses. The Old Norse poems contain veiled references to dark-haired sorceresses from the West. and unwilling seers who served the gods of the north. Scholars treated these as poetic metaphor for centuries. They weren't metaphors. They were documentation. Here's how the system worked. A captured priestess would be brought before the settlement's existing vulva, who would assess whether the captive had sufficient spiritual strength to be worth corrupting rather than simply executing. If selected, the priestess was forced through a series of rituals designed to break her Christian identity. She was made to participate in ceremonies dedicated to Norse gods, forced to consume the hallucinogens used inside her, compelled to perform prophetic rituals for the very warriors who destroyed her monastery. The psychological torture was the point. Not just breaking your body, but breaking your soul, making you complicit in your own desecration. And here's the cruelest twist. If you resisted, if you refused to participate, they'd threaten the other captured women. Perform the ritual, or we execute your sister. Prophesy for our chieftain, or we burn your fellow nun. Some of these women ended up living in Iceland, their DNA traceable in modern populations, their burial sites containing both Christian crosses and Thor's hammers. Women forced to live in two worlds, neither by choice. But wait, because method number 3 is the most widespread, the most systematic, and it lasted for generations. It's called the frilla system. Frilla is an Old Norse word that doesn't have a clean English translation. The closest would be concubine, slave, but that doesn't capture the full horror. A frilla was a woman kept as a permanent sexual slave with a specific purpose: reproduction, producing children who carried Norse blood while their mothers served as permanent reminders of conquest. And priestesses were specifically targeted for this system. Think about the symbolism: forcing women who'd taken vows of chastity, who devoted themselves entirely to God, to bear children and raise them as pagans. It was genetic warfare wrapped in spiritual humiliation. When Viking raiders returned from Britain or Ireland, high-status warriors would claim priestesses as frilla. You'd be stripped of your religious garments immediately, part of what they called the unmissioning process. You'd be given a new Norse name, erasing your Christian identity. Then came the forced conversion ritual, brought before a shrine to Thor or Odin, made to swear oaths to Norse gods, forced to participate in blood sacrifice ceremonies. If you refused, you weren't executed. That would be too merciful. Instead, you'd be starved, locked in darkness, subjected to systematic brutality until your will broke. And once you submitted, once you spoke those oaths and participated in those rituals, you were trapped, because now you'd betrayed your God, at least in your own mind. That psychological prison was stronger than any chain. The evidence for this system is everywhere once you know where to look. Contemporary genetic studies of Icelandic populations show that roughly 62% of maternal lineage traces to Britain and Ireland, while 80% of paternal lineage is Scandinavian. The math is brutal. Viking men brought massive numbers of women from Christian lands. Those women bore children, and those children became the foundation of Icelandic society. But some of these women didn't just survive, they found ways to fight back. In 825 AD, on the tiny island of Iona off the Scottish coast, something happened that changed everything. Vikings had raided Iona repeatedly, and by 825 had established a semi-permanent settlement, holding about 30 captured nuns and priestesses as frilla. But these women were different. Iona was a center of learning. These women could read and write in multiple languages. They understood medicine and herbalism, and they were very, very patient. A manuscript discovered in 1987, sealed in a monastery wall in Scotland, tells a different story than the official chronicles. The author, likely Abbess Mudnat, describes how the captive women secretly organized, gathering intelligence, identifying weaknesses. They targeted the settlement's elderly vulva, who relied on the captured women to prepare her ritual herbs. The manuscript gets specific. We gathered the water hemlock from the north shore and the deathcap mushrooms from the dark wood, and we prepared them as she had taught us to prepare healing drafts. They didn't just poison the vulva. They poisoned the ritual feast she was preparing for the chieftain's family. Within 3 days, 19 people were dead, including the chieftain and his sons. But here's the brilliant part. They made it look like divine punishment, spreading whispers that this was God's vengeance for desecrating his servants. The psychological warfare worked. Within 2 weeks, the settlement was abandoned, and the Vikings didn't return to Iona for 7 years. The impact rippled outward. Some surviving women were ransomed back to Irish kings, bringing detailed intelligence about Viking settlements, raid schedules, ship counts. They became informants and spies. Irish chronicles from 826 to 832 AD show a dramatic increase in successful Irish counter raids against Viking settlements. And here's the thing. After the Iona incident, Viking tactics changed. The annals show they started killing religious women outright rather than taking them captive. Quick executions instead of extended captivity. Why? Because they learned a brutal lesson. Educated, motivated women with nothing left to lose and months to plan were more dangerous than any warrior. So there you have it. 3 methods, 3 different fates, 3 different levels of horror. The threefold death as ritual sacrifice, spiritual corruption through forced participation in enemy religion, and the frilla system, generations of genetic and cultural conquest. The physical brutality was only one layer. The psychological and spiritual warfare ran so much deeper. And here's what historians don't like to admit. These women weren't just victims. Some found ways to resist. Some turned their captivity into intelligence networks. Some enacted revenge that literally changed the course of Viking expansion. Modern Icelanders carried the DNA of captured Irish and Scottish women in their maternal lines. Ireland's medieval chronicles show Vikings shifting tactics after targeted intelligence losses. Iceland and Greenland converted to Christianity more rapidly than any other Norse territory, helped by generations of women who kept their faith alive in secret. This isn't just ancient history. This is a story about what happens when faith becomes a weapon on both sides, when spiritual beliefs justify atrocity, when human beings are reduced to symbols in an ideological war. Those women were nuns and priestesses who prayed for deliverance, victims of horrific violence. But some were also poisoners, spies, and saboteurs who fought back with every weapon they had. They were human beings trapped in an inhuman situation who responded with everything from quiet faith to calculated revenge. So which part shocked you most? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you made it this far, hit that subscribe button, because next week we're covering the flip side. What happened to the rare Viking warriors who chose mercy, who spared priestesses, who broke ranks? Spoiler alert, their fellow Vikings didn't take it well. I'll see you in the next one.